You are tuned to Radio Imanzi, broadcasting from Kigali. Here is the news, brought to you by Fiona Umuganwa. The headlines. Heads of anti-corruption agencies from the Commonwealth's 19 African member states are gathering in Kigali, Rwanda. Media practitioners have called for discouraging unprofessional journalists who are tarnishing the image of the profession in the digital era. A draft opinion suggests the U.S. Supreme Court could be poised to overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade case that legalized abortion nationwide. Welcome back. News in detail. Media practitioners have called for discouraging unprofessional journalists who are tarnishing the image of the profession in the digital era. The call was made on May 3rd while celebrating World Press Freedom Day. The discussions during the celebration focused on the role of freedom of expression in promoting accountable governance, addressing the digital challenges to freedom of expression, and fighting cybercrimes, media viability in digital times, and threats to public trust. The topics also included digital communications for increased freedom of press, tackling abuse in the digital communications, as well as responses to online violence and sexual harassment against women journalists. Thierry Murangira, Rwanda Investigation Bureau spokesperson, said journalists should do professional journalism to differentiate themselves from quack journalists. Quack journalists are tarnishing the image of professional journalists. Ejidi Bibio, the chairperson of Rwanda Female Journalists Association, said that sexual harassment should be eliminated in the media industry. Sexual harassment, she said, can affect the performance of female journalists in the media industry. The data from a global study released on January 26 shows that on average 40% of women media professionals have experienced verbal or physical sexual harassment in the workplace. However, only 20% of that number choose to report such cases, while others remain silent. Heads of anti-corruption agencies from the Commonwealth's 19 African member states are gathering in Kigali, Rwanda from today until 7th May 2022 for a major conference that will seek to boost regional crime-fighting efforts. Now, in its 12th year, the Conference of the Heads of Anti-Corruption Agencies in Commonwealth Africa is convened under the theme Combating Corruption for Good Governance and Sustainable Development in Africa. Prime Minister Dr. Edward Ngirente pointed out that by way of illustration, the offense of corruption is not subject to any statute of limitations in Rwandan law.
By way of illustration, and as was mentioned by our Chief Ombudsman, the offense of corruption in Rwanda is not subject to any statute of limitation in Rwandan laws. And this implies that prosecution of corruption crimes has no time limit. To promote accountability and transparency, among others, since 2006, the government of Rwanda adopted the performance contract system, commonly known as imihigo in our national language. Under this system, every year, public servants sign performance contract with their managers or supervisors or head of their institutions. This is done at all levels of administration, from the local district to ministries and embassies. In that spirit of preventing and fight any form of corruption, the government of Rwanda aims at using information and communication technologies for delivering services to our citizens. Many examples were given, and let me tell you that so far, key government services are currently accessed online. Different electronic systems were developed and are now in use, including the integrated electronic case management system in the justice sector, the integrated financial management system, the e-recruitment system, as well as the e-procurement. Distinguished guests, as I conclude, I wish to recognize efforts made by the Commonwealth Africa member states to fight corruption for the last 11 years since the establishment of the Association of Anti-Corruption Agencies in the Commonwealth Africa. It is my expectation that this conference will come up with concrete anti-corruption measures and public sector management practices based on the rule of law, transparency, and accountability governance. As corruption continues to emerge in more sophisticated forms, we need to come up with innovative ways to prevent and address this evolving crime. On this note, I have the pleasure to declare the 12th Regional Conference of Head of Anti-Corruption Agencies in the Commonwealth Africa officially open.
The Commonwealth Secretary-General, the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, noted that corruption is a serious threat to sustainable and equitable development. She pointed out that every dollar lost to corruption is a dollar lost to investing in a child's education, healthcare, or much-needed infrastructure.
In 2016, very soon after Commonwealth heads of government entrusted me with the responsibilities of Secretary-General, I convened the first Commonwealth Tackling Corruption Together conference. And this conference identified the clear need for a clear, simple, deliverable, pan-Commonwealth tool to help promote the integrity and combat corruption in public and private sectors. And the Secretariat responded to that need, working in close consultation with Member States to develop the groundbreaking anti-corruption benchmarks. And I will never forget President Buhari at that conference when they asked him about what the UK and others should do. And he said very clearly, I don't need an apology. I just need them to send my money back. Give me my money back. And these benchmarks are there to make sure that others give the money back. The package of 22 measures ranges from the disclosure of assets and rules around political lobbying to investigations, prosecutions, and sanctions. Each benchmark is defined by a core principle and contains detailed guidance for turning that principle into practice. Across the board, they are consistent with the international standards, and in some areas they go further to set new standards. For instance, we believe the Commonwealth Anti-Corruption Benchmarks is the first document which connects public and private conduct at such a scale. So the benchmarks are a tool for governments providing very practical support to help them achieve transparency and good governance in the corporate sector. And they are a tool for businesses providing consistency and clarity on pan-Commonwealth trade and procurement, and providing companies with incentives to prevent and detect bribery and corruption. And I am proud to say that our anti-corruption work received an International Excellence Award, which was received by our own dear Dr. Karatang. And so we are very proud of the work all of you have done with us to enable that to take place. It speaks volumes for our work, and it is something of which we can be really, really proud. That was the benefit of us coming together, working together, and being determined. So many of you have been part of that journey, and we all need each other on the road ahead. We would not have got where we are today without your commitment.
The conference has been held annually since its inception in 2011 and is part of the Commonwealth Secretariat's mission to help governments, judges, the police and other public institutions tackle systemic corruption by sharing best practices, training and policy research. Nyagatare District Council has announced the launch of a community outreach campaign to assist residents in resolving problems and to explain the council's responsibilities and functions. Now, this comes at a time when most residents claim to be unaware of how this council operates, which is why they asked them to approach the residents in order to be able to help them find solutions to their problems. The council's chairperson, Abatoni Faith, says there are measures in place to promote the councillors' work to address the issue of being unknown in the community they are supposed to be serving. The Rwanda Governance Board annual survey consistently identifies district councillors with poor performance. Marathon traders in Rusizi district say they are unable to trade in the markets set up by the district authorities due to a lack of funds. When the district first announced that the traders should begin trading in markets rather than on the streets, they had raised the same concerns. However, the district has stated that those who agree to trade in the markets will be assisted in obtaining that investment. According to officials, the marathon traders should have been trading in the new market as of the 11th of last month, but they are still on the streets. Dr. Chibidiga Anseti, Mayor of Rusizi District, said those in need of investment will find it where they are asked to be.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
President Samia Suluhu Hassan has today ordered a review of the media law to promote press freedom in Tanzania, even as she strongly warned against irresponsible journalism. Samia said her administration is now in dialogue with media stakeholders following complaints that the laws were draconian and hamper media development in Tanzania. She directed the Ministry of Information, Communication and Information Technology to collaborate with media stakeholders to review the Media Services Act of 2016 to enable journalists and media houses to carry out their duties freely. Samia urged them to come up with better and friendly laws and regulations that would protect journalists and open more space for the freedom of expression and the media. Muslims across India marked Eid al-Fitr on Tuesday by offering prayers outside mosques, with the celebrations this year following a series of attacks against the religious minority during the month of Ramadan. Anti-Muslim sentiment and attacks have surged across the country in the last month, including stone throwing between Hindu and Muslim groups during religious processions and subsequent demolitions by authorities of a number of properties belonging mostly to Muslims. A draft opinion suggests the US Supreme Court could be poised to overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade case that legalized abortion nationwide. A decision to overrule Roe would lead to abortion bans in roughly half the states and could have huge ramifications for this year's elections. President Joe Biden said the basic fairness and the stability of the law demand that the court not overturn Roe, while emphasizing that he couldn't speak to the authenticity of the draft. Biden said his administration is preparing for all eventualities for when the court ultimately rules, and that a decision overturning Roe would raise the stakes for voters in November's heated midterm elections. Whatever the outcome, the Political report late Monday represented an extreme rare breach of the court's secretive deliberation process and on a case of surpassing importance. The document was labeled a first draft of the opinion of the court in a case challenging Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks, a case known as Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Spain's fragile coalition government was on the defensive today over its announcement that the mobile phones of the premier and the defense minister were tapped using Pegasus spyware. Felix Bolaños, a cabinet minister, said on Monday that the phones of Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and Defense Minister Margarita Robles were hacked last year using the spyware made by Israel's NSO group. The disclosure followed accusations from Catalonia's regional government that Spain's intelligence services used Pegasus to hack the mobile phone of dozens of separatist politicians. Beijing is preparing new hospital facilities to deal with a possible spike in COVID-19 cases, even though the numbers of new cases remain low. State media reported a 1,000-bed hospital in the northern suburbs built for the 2003 SARS outbreak has been refurbished in case it's needed. City officials on Saturday also announced they are setting up a 10,000-bed quarantine facility in the sprawling China National Exhibition Center to house those who have tested positive and their close contacts. Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, a former transitional federation president of Somalia, has been elected a member of the House of the People. The seat, labeled as HOP 146, was over the past 4 years held by the current Minister of Internal Security, Abdullahi Mohamed Nur. When Ahmed's challenger, Sharif Abubakar Ahmed, quit the race just before the voting, he sailed through unopposed. With that, we come to the end of tonight's edition.